All right, so my name is Asa Williams. I'm from York, Pennsylvania, now living in New York City and working out of there. I've always been focused and heavy-handed in things like illustration, starting off. End of high school, gravitated towards a more digital world. From there, ended up going to SCAD, focusing on graphic design, which led me to Atlanta, which is where I started working with musicians. I had a real pleasure of working with a body of artists. Getting my start through Georgia and the South, and Atlanta specifically, was a huge catalyst for where I jumped from there. I knew of Lisha beforehand, before we started working, but in more of that underground space. Lisha was kind of brought to me through my cousin, who is a manager in the city. He came to me, told me, hey, Lisha, she's an incredible artist with a lot of promise, a lot of talent, and she has this incredible album with an incredible producer. It kind of just happened to be that I was someone that, my cousin knows, and we worked together for a while, and we've always kind of done work together. He was like, I really think you can put something special on this. It took so many steps to finally achieve the final image. My biggest thing in my process too is I like to have a certain understanding of a person as opposed to just the music. I feel like when you make music, you put yourself into it as much as anything else you do. So it was really important for me to try to understand Lisha and Trini from a creative perspective, but also a personal perspective. How can I implement them and their energy into this project, even if you don't know them? When we first started, I had asked if I could, hop on a call with them and talk about this project. And when we first started, I have to be honest, I was given the title before I was given any of the music. And when I first got the title, I struggled in the beginning to visually place what groovy meant to me. I played with that idea of what does groovy or even steppin' shit mean to me in my head. Finally hearing it clicked for me. We exchanged some reference photos, and I was sent some things that I would say in small doses was helpful to the image. Definitely starting at those reference pictures, and after scrapping them, I started to implement a little bit of my own influences and my own references. The uniqueness, I would say, came from intent. Big thing when we first started talking, even though we didn't have anything that we wanted to go off of, whether that was inspo or image. I told Lisha and Trini from the jump, and especially Lisha, I was like, I really don't want to box you into any type of aesthetic. So it was like, what subject can I use as this cover that holds visual weight, but also holds multiple types of energy and a little bit of power? I wanted it to kind of control the room. I'm talking to her about the type of person she is and her interests and kind of what makes Lisha Lisha. She brought up the fact that she owned a ton of cats. It wasn't even the idea that owning a bunch of cats was the gravitating force for me, as much as was when I heard it, I was looking for a subject that, one, wasn't cliche, two, still held some weight or I could put some weight to it, and also personified the sound of the album and Lisha as a whole. Kittens are cute, but they also, they have some aggression to them in some type of ways. When I heard cat, I ran with that idea. Like, that was the one thing through our conversation that, for whatever reason, really sat with me. And from there, I think I was able to attach it to a lot more of the other things that I was inspired by. That idea of funkadelic and, spacecrafts, and more importantly, Pedro Bell's work that he did on a lot of the covers. Incredible artist. A knack for kind of storytelling in his own way, but kind of even commentary on man and machine, and like what I kind of consider as like the idea of mathematics, or like we're all complex beings in a certain way. I wanted to personify that. That gravitated me towards covers like Glowtoven and Pluto 3D. That kind of sat with me in a similar way, where the references that I was thinking about helped me kind of guide what I wanted it to look like visually. I was leaning even towards more things like Electric Light Orchestra. So a lot of their covers have this kind of like spacecraft imagery that's really beautiful. Weldon Irvine has a cover that is exponentially close to the idea of the Sphinx. I think even Journey subconsciously too, there's a couple of their covers that have that same kind of energy. And very oddly enough too, like Nas's I Am. I spent a lot of time at the Met too, looking at a lot of Egyptian artifacts. There were definitely a lot of changes. When I first started this project, it didn't start at this rendered chrome type of thing. It started through illustrations that I personally do. So like, even if it was a sketch, there were a lot of things on the early on sketches that I transferred and moved to the final, but it was more of like a small node to it. I did a lot of front-facing cat work, and from the jump I already kind of knew I wanted it this thing in your face, this thing that's kind of hypnotizing. I'd realized that I wanted to pivot towards more of the look that I was seeing in a lot of my other inspirations. I soon realized that it wasn't going to carry the weight I wanted it to. So from there, I think I kind of pivoted into a different, style. I was doing collaging of images. I think going from illustration to the collaging and working with kind of like real rendered elements, I realized I wanted to come out more 3D. I wanted it to look like those ones I was talking about. Birds of Paradise was a huge reference in the sense of when I decided I want to go to this kind of chromified look, with Lisha being from South Carolina and also being inspired by, Cartucci's Birds of Paradise work on that early stuff, I was gravitating towards more natural things like flowers. 3D rendering for me was something fresh and new to me. I was working on a Windows computer that's now broken. I don't even have any of the Adobe programs anymore. I think Trini's production really, really pushed forward what I wanted it to look like. I had this cat head and this entity in this machine. Trini asked me to add the piano keys. There were a bunch of different details that I kept adding. I played with, what to put between the eyes. The antenna was really important to me sonically, but the symmetry kind of like pulled you into the eyes. It kind of like hypnotized you a little bit. And it's not fully symmetrical. There's certain things, but in the sense of around the cat, I spent a lot of work trying to put their names and the title into the project, especially after adding the keys. If you look at the keys, I put hieroglyphics on it. And when I was doing the hieroglyphics, I couldn't match the depth that I was trying to put into the keys with this font that I was trying to use or make. I leaned into that idea of using something that wasn't a language. I was considering it as creating a language that I could put on there that you couldn't read because you didn't need to read it. I knew that I would be opening some door open to the overall look, eventually having this kind of digital render AI slop type of look to it. At first, I kind of was like, it felt disingenuous, and I really, really took some time to pause it and come back to it and realize that I think part of the reason I wanted to lean into that kind of look or teeter that line of the AI slop was because I wanted to make commentary on the fact that I feel like there's a lot of artists nowadays who make music for themselves just to feel like they have to release it or give it to media or give it for money or any type of purpose other than creating from yourself. I was willing and wanting people to question the integrity of it. I wanted the cover to walk that line because I wanted people to form their own opinions on the music. We've always heard, don't judge a book by its cover, right? If I can make it seem like this is something that was purposely intentfully done, which it was, I can help people understand that, form your own opinions. Get to know Lisha G and Trini. Get to know the new tools that are part of this world. Get to know AI and what it's doing negatively to this world and what it's doing positively. Form your own opinions, be a part of something. I was willing to take the damage for that look and that type of work because I know went into it. To see people like even Wu-Tang who are now doing AI covers, these people have fan bases that love them to death, that see the realness, that understand the realness, and they have an unwavering loyalty to these people. I see that in Lisha and her work and her music and how she, interacts with her fans and the people she loves. So it was one of those things that when I think about that idea of the ability to cut real and fake, that's really where it was. It was received really well, really positive by everyone, articles, groups, Fader, whoever it was. I saw the comments of this is amazing. I saw the comments of get this shit out of here, right? I was happy about that because I knew that it did what it needed to do. I had to find happiness with it before I released it. I don't necessarily think there's always a certain answer when it comes to creating a piece of art. When I do my personal work, it's more rooted in a certain style and illustration, and I use a lot of color and I use acrylic dyes and I use a lot of texture and stuff like that. A lot of my personal work is a little bit more tethered to also things that bring me a certain piece but are also like closest to me. Long-term goal, I love doing these commissions, but I'll eventually be doing a children's book on some like Shel Silverstein poems and stuff type of thing. But I think any artist that I would want to work with moving forward is just someone who instinctually is willing to let a project naturally occur. I think 10K as a conglomerate And as a label and stuff, anyone in 10K I'd be, honored to work with. I'm a huge internet fan, the internet. I would love to work for Sid or anyone like that. I have some friends who are incredibly talented. I mean, Miles Ave is just like sonically, he's on another planet too. I want to remind people and myself, show face, show your work, be a part of something, put yourself out there, because it's something I fall short of and I'm working on. So moving forward, this is a big catalyst for that too. I mean, Instagram is where it's at for me, just because I can put a link there, and I can, and that's where I'm going to be keeping a lot of my updated stuff through the work I do, whether it's through my website or the link or anything like that. For now, my website, Instagram, stick with me. I'll have some stuff. I've got some paintings coming. I got some clothing. I got some more covers and work that's coming out with some people. I try to let people know that I'm here, even if I'm not here. I'm in the background and I'm on the way, but give me that time. You don't want to rush anything. So I'm on the process of putting everything out, but that's really where you can find me and start to find me.